I am happy. I have great news. It could be greater, but it's good to start. Representative Thomas Massey has introduced a bill to audit the Federal Reserve, and it has passed the House Committee on Oversight and Government Reform after only a half hour of debate. That is good, because the Federal Reserve is one of the most nefarious, unconstitutional organizations we have. So what happens now? It goes to the House. If the House votes on it and passes, it will go to the Senate. Senate passes it, it goes to Trump, he signs into law, and the Federal Reserve will be audited, which is great because, like I said, the Federal Reserve is a really nefarious institution. Just for example, they lost $4 trillion in 2008. I think over the last 18 years, they're missing $15 trillion. It should also be noted that we as taxpayers paid the Federal Reserve roughly $500 billion a year on interest payments alone. $500 billion. To put that into context, we have a $600 billion deficit. So here at the Fed, we're down to $100 billion deficit. The founding fathers were against the Federal Reserve. That is why they gave, in the Constitution, Congress the ability, the power to control, to coin currency. And then Woodrow Wilson, the biggest progressive we ever had as president, signs the Federal Reserve Act into law and essentially gives control of the U.S. economy to a group of private bankers who we have no control over. The U.S. government does not pick who the Federal Reserve is. The chairman of the Federal Reserve is from a list of employees that the Federal Reserve picks, and they give them to the president. Here, pick one of these people, and the president picks. So in essence, the president picks the chairman of the Federal Reserve, but in reality they don't. Because you could give the president 50 really horribly crooked people, and they pick the best one. But they're still a crook when it comes down to it. It should also be noted that there has only been one president who has never had any national debt. That's Andrew Jackson. Why? Because he destroyed the second central bank of the United States. The Federal Reserve is a third central bank. Central banks don't work. Government should have the power to coin money. So what the bill does, essentially, here, I will read it to you. A sec. Massey's bill directs the Government Accountability Office to complete, within 12 months, an audit of the Federal Reserve Board and Federal Reserve banks with respect to monetary policy, international financial transactions, transactions made under the direction of the Federal Open Market Committee, and discussions among Federal Reserve officers, board members, and employees regarding any of these matters. Ron Paul was really against the Federal Reserve. A lot of people are. The founding fathers were. Thomas Jefferson especially. He has said numerous quotes of how essentially central banks should not dictate the policy, the monetary policy of a country. And that's key there. That is essential to digest. But this is a good start. I want to get rid of the Fed altogether, but this is a good start. I think Trump would sign the bill into law because Steve Bannon works with Trump. And Steve Bannon has said in the past how we have to get rid of the Fed. So that's a good start here. The problem is that the Federal Reserve is a very, very robust organization. They are a cartel, essentially, a banking cartel. And that is true to every sense of the word. It's scary because since they're so robust, since they're so big, they have their foothold in almost everything, from global economics to local economics. They have special interests. They have money in politicians. They have a lot of control in Washington and over the world. For an example, the Bank of the Rothschilds, I think it was the 1800s, France versus Great Britain. I have to check my history, but either way, they funded both wars. They funded both countries. So no matter what, who won or lost the war, both would be in debt to the Bank of the Rothschilds. It should also be noted that how was the Federal Reserve instituted? Who came up with the idea? Well, we don't know. What we do know, though, is that they met on Jekyll Island in Georgia. And some of the people that were there were the Rothschilds, were J.P. Morgan, or Rockefeller, and they all had code names. Their meeting was so secret that they all had code names, and that they were all told to take different trains there and not converse with each other at all. If you really want a good history of the nefarious actions of the Federal Reserve, check out the book, The Creature from Jekyll Island. It is a very in-depth book, and it goes over how the Federal Reserve is, in essence, a banking cartel. It's a banking cartel. It's against everything the founding fathers stood for. Because what people forget, or what people really don't think about, is that the founding fathers did not come from England to America strictly because they were upset with the authoritarian rule of the English government. No, they came over also primarily because of the English taxation system. Because it was so bad. Because they wanted freedom from this. And this is why they gave Congress the power to coin money. Andrew Jackson, on his deathbed, he was asked, "What was your greatest achievement as president?" And Andrew Jackson said, I killed the bank. He also said the bank, Martin Van Buren, is trying to kill me, but I will kill it. He was the only president to not have any national debt, and some attribute this to him completely removing the second central bank of the U.S. We don't need central banks. We don't need central banks. Woodrow Wilson, the progressive who signed it into law, even said later on that it was his biggest regret. He said something on the lines of, "I am a most unhappy man. I have unwittingly and unwillingly signed over the power of the U.S. to blah, blah, blah." FDR, who is probably the closest thing to a socialist that America's ever had, has even said that we've always known since Teddy Roosevelt that we've always known that the economy is controlled by a group of private bankers. I did a video. This was my first video I ever did that required editing, and it was 8 scary facts about the Federal Reserve. I think I'm going to redo the video, though, because, like I said, it was my first one. It was really poorly edited, but some of the stuff you hear on there, like Thomas Jefferson, he was so against a central bank. He understood what would happen if we adopted a central banking system, that our children would be so far in debt that they would not be able to own anything, which is exactly what is happening right now. We have to end the Fed. To do that, though, we have to first audit the Fed. We don't have to, but most people in their minds, they want to audit the Fed before they completely remove something, which seems to make sense at a logistical viewpoint. But this is a good start. That's why I'm not a fan of Alexander Hamilton, because he was for a central bank. And it's dangerous. And there was something else I was going to say, and I can't remember what, though, but it dealt with this topic. I think I should take notes more, and so I can be able to remember them all, but you probably don't want to see me thinking, so I will let it go with this, but God, can't remember. I guess I am done. I just remembered. Abraham Lincoln. Sorry, I had to go back there. Abraham Lincoln. During the Civil War, the Bank of England, among others, wanted Abraham Lincoln to borrow money from them to fund the Civil War effort. And Lincoln knew that if he did, that after the war's end, America would be in an extreme amount of debt. So much so that it would essentially bankrupt the United States. So what Lincoln did as a response to that, he said, you know what? No, we are going to print our own money. So Lincoln instituted the Greenback Law, which allowed the colonies to print their own currency, which bypassed borrowing money from a private institution, which bypassed the interest rates that would be accumulated with the borrowing of the money. Why can't we do that today? Even if we don't go back to the gold standard. Now, Ron Paul is going back for the gold standard. Bill Still is not, because most of the people who own the Federal Reserve and who own the central banks worldwide, they also own the majority of the gold stock, which does seem to make sense because it doesn't matter if you have a Federal Reserve or not. Whoever controls the gold controls the supply and demand, so can also control the economy that way. But the problem with this is that if you don't go back to the gold standard, if you get rid of the Federal Reserve and then you print your own money, you still have the worst tax of all, which is inflation. Inflation devalues the dollar. The gold standard doesn't, because gold is tangible. So that becomes a problem there. Now, my idea, if I was ever president, say we got rid of the Federal Reserve and we do not want to go back to the gold standard, we could pass a constitutional amendment that dictated that Congress could only spend 1% more than the total revenue. So this way, you can still be able to control inflation, and you can control government spending, because the government can only spend essentially as much as they take in. So if Bernie Sanders wants free college, free healthcare, free all this stuff, that's going to cost the U.S. $30 trillion. Well, he's going to have to tax the equivalent to afford that, which he would gladly do, but what he doesn't realize is that would totally bankrupt the nation. That would drive unemployment rates to the roof. That would essentially destroy the nation. So that was one of the ideas I had. Or you could find another type of material, another type of metal that is tangible that you could use as a substitute for gold. So there are things that way too. Sorry, I forgot something as well. JFK was the last person to go against the Federal Reserve. He instituted Executive Order 11110. And that said that the U.S. government would start printing their own currency, which would essentially bypass the Federal Reserve. 6 months later, Kennedy was assassinated, and sadly, LBJ threw out the order. I bring that up, I remember that, because when I was talking about using other commodities as the tangible metals or materials that we could use as the foundation essentially for the currency, as the backer for the currency, there could be more than just gold. We could do gold with silver. We could do platinum. I mean, you could find a lot of materials, but you would have to create some type of conversion table that so much gold here equals so much silver here, compare it like that. You have to create some type of chart like that. But that's what we could do here. We could do this. This is a good first step with auditing the Fed. I hope to go more. I hope this continues on, and pretty soon, once we get rid of the Federal Reserve, no one understands how much better the country is going to be. But that is not going to happen without a fight. As soon as the End the Fed bill, not audit the Fed, but End the Fed bill goes onto the floor, you will see bankers and economists and all these people come out of the woodwork to go on every single news show and say that if we end the Fed, the economy will crash. I mean, they are going to put so much fear tactics into the people that the people are going to be worried about ending the Fed, and they're going to be writing to their senators and congressmen, hey, maybe we shouldn't do this. So when the time comes to end the Fed, there is going to be a lot of public fear, a lot of public outcry from both angles. But we have to stay strong because the world will be so much better without a private institutions controlling governments. And I'm done. For real this time, I'm done.